Mark felt a cold dread creep into his gut. It was their anniversary, a day for celebration, but Sarah had a different kind of announcement ready: divorce. Yet, somehow, Mark wasn't completely surprised. Some folks might cry, others might throw a fit. In his head, though, Mark was already flipping the script. His Sarah had been sneaking around with a guy from work, quietly plotting the end of their marriage. But Mark had seen the signs, felt the shift. He'd caught her off guard, confronted her in front of people. This whole mess was meant to be private, something to handle carefully. The stakes were high. If word got out. Let's get straight to it. At 37, Mark couldn't shake this nagging feeling about Sarah, who was 39. It felt like she was living a secret life. Maybe an affair, maybe she just didn't care anymore. Her behavior had become strange, distant, over the last few months. At first, he'd brushed it off, but now he knew he had to act before it was too late. Mark and Sarah had been married for almost 8 years, together for nearly 5 before that. Back then, they both worked part-time in sales. Sarah saved hard for her master's, while Mark focused on building his business. Eventually, they both moved on. Sarah got into grad school, and Mark's business took off. When she finished her studies, she talked about their future, about getting married. She wanted stability, shared moments. But Mark was hesitant. He knew the demands of his work, the risk that he might not give her the life she imagined. He came from nothing and wanted to build something lasting for the future. Sarah promised to stick by him, through thick and thin. She told him not to be a clingy husband, as she wanted to pursue her PhD and dive into research. In the end, Mark gave in, thinking he'd found his forever partner. Their plan seemed perfect. They got married. The first few years had their bumps, but they got through them together. Mark worked tirelessly, and Sarah managed the house while doing her PhD. He poured everything into his business, but he didn't forget her. They had monthly date nights and quarterly trips. He couldn't always help with chores, but Sundays were his day for fixing things around the house. Sometimes she'd mention his late nights, but she usually understood. The money he brought in gave them a comfortable life. Her constant support made him believe they were building something amazing together. She got her PhD, but never really had a career. She did some research projects here and there, but nothing serious. She seemed content, and Mark was fine with that since his business was doing well enough to support them both. And now here they were. His business was thriving, giving them a life of comfort and wealth. Finally, Mark had the time and money to focus on her, on their future. For the last 3 or 4 years, they'd been trying for a baby. Their age was becoming a real problem, especially for Sarah's mental well-being. Almost a year ago, they went to therapy, and she decided to focus on her career as a distraction. She felt a void, wanted something that was truly hers. Mark fully supported her. He just wanted her to be happy. He asked if something was wrong, why the sudden change. She said she'd wanted a baby before a career, but now that seemed unlikely, driving her crazy. So, focusing on work made sense. Mark agreed. He helped her look for jobs. She spent a lot of time searching and eventually got a job at a decent-sized company. She was excited. Seeing her happy after so long made Mark happy too. Their relationship was good for a while, but it didn't last. Over the last 3 or 4 months, Sarah had changed. The loving, caring partner he knew was gone. She was distant, often irritable, always glued to her phone and laptop. At first, she blamed her job, saying she had to work extra hard to learn everything. She started working late, coming home long after dinner. Mark accepted it because it was her choice. She'd text if she was late, or do something nice to make up for missed dates. He figured it was just the pressure of a new job, so he gave her space. But things kept getting worse. She barely talked to him, barely smiled. When he tried to talk, he got short, cold answers. If he asked about her schedule, she snapped, saying he was controlling. She even twisted things, making him feel like it was his fault. If he complained about not spending time together, she'd smirk and say, "This is how you've been for the last 8 years." It felt like she was getting back at him for something, holding on to some old anger. It hurt to be ignored. The tables had turned. He'd given her his best years, and now he just wanted a life of his own. It was a sad thought that she'd been carrying this hurt all along. He tried to talk to her, but it was becoming toxic. He tried to have honest conversations, asking if she was unhappy, but she wouldn't open up. Every time he brought it up, she'd give a sly smile and say, "Look at you. Who needs who now? Who's being immature?" Therapy was his last hope, a place where maybe she'd finally be honest. But she wasn't ready for that. Her attitude was infuriating. He'd asked her countless times if she was angry, if she didn't love him anymore, if there was someone else. Her response was always a chuckle or a laugh, followed by a sarcastic remark implying he was just facing the consequences of his own actions. What was he supposed to do? There were no real answers, just smirks, eye rolls, and dodging conversations. She was always on her phone or laptop, giggling at messages, then quickly hiding the screen when he came near. Lately, she hadn't even told him where she was going. He told her behavior was hurting their marriage, but she didn't seem to care. She spent weekends with her colleagues. He felt her slipping away, or maybe she was already gone. He even asked if she wanted a divorce. Same response, soft laughter and vague comments like, "Not so easily, darling." He tried to look at her phone and laptop, but they were always locked. A couple of times, he asked for the password, but she just replied, "Have I ever looked at yours?" Touché. Whenever he tried to talk about her behavior, she'd turn it back on him, saying he'd always treated her this way. He asked why she hadn't said anything all this time. She said she'd given up everything for him, for their love, and now it was his turn to show his devotion. It felt completely unfair. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He knew how bad things were, and he couldn't keep living like this. He needed to know what was really going on. The thought of hiring a private investigator crossed his mind, but he didn't know where to start, what was legal. He'd try to find out online, but it was all too much. He was desperate for help. It was over, Opie. She was gone, emotionally shut off, maybe forever unwilling to take responsibility. She was twisting things, trying to justify her actions, like he owed her something. He did. Update 1. Thanks to everyone who suggested a PI and for the support. It helped to know he wasn't alone. He'd tried everything to get into her laptop and phone, but no luck. So, he hired a private investigator. They spent about a month digging. The waiting was awful, made even worse by Sarah's constant irritating behavior. Every day, he was more certain she was with someone else. When the PI finally gave him the details, he was prepared, but one thing threw him. It was a co-worker, a decade younger. They were equals at the company, and it wasn't just physical, they were in love. The agency sent photos of them going into a hotel, holding hands. The real gut punch was finding out she was already talking to a divorce lawyer with her boyfriend, planning to serve Mark on their 8th anniversary and take half his stuff. Finding out her plan hit him like a truck. It would have been easy to just confront her with the evidence and kick her out. But why let her off so easily? She wanted to make him suffer. As a devoted husband, wasn't it his duty to fulfill her wishes? If she had a problem, she could have talked to him instead of being sneaky. Even if she'd fallen for someone else and wanted a divorce, she could have been honest. Instead, this witch was plotting to humiliate him. So, he decided to play her game. He immediately hired a divorce lawyer and gave him all the PI's information, even paying extra to speed things up. He needed to be one step ahead. Meanwhile, Sarah kept up her annoying act. Knowing the truth made her presence unbearable. He started working longer hours. For a while, she didn't notice his distance, and it didn't bother her. But when she did, she started leaving little breadcrumbs, trying to keep him interested while secretly planning to destroy him. After months of waiting, she finally tried to get close to him again. The thought of another man touching her in that way made his stomach churn. He wasn't proud of it, but he was cold and harsh with her that day. He almost made her cry, but he wasn't ready to let go yet. That night, he did something else. He recorded their conversation. He'd wanted video, but couldn't get it set up in time. Audio would have to do. It served two purposes. With the divorce papers in progress, his lawyer told him to document everything. The recording would be useful later. With the paperwork almost done, he planned a surprise party for her, a celebration with friends and family. But just as he was about to put his plan in motion, an invitation arrived, her company's annual party. Perfect. With his lawyer's help, he prepared to serve her the divorce papers publicly. In the days leading up to the event, he acted like a clueless husband. She probably thought she had him completely fooled. She asked if he was coming. He said maybe, if his schedule allowed. She seemed indifferent, assuming he'd stay home. The night of the party, he dressed sharply and made his entrance without telling her. His heart pounded at the thought of the awkward moment to come. The room buzzed with chatter. Finally, he saw her, surrounded by people, laughing, carefree, like all her worries had vanished. The boyfriend was there too. Mark recognized him from the photos. He walked up to her. She looked flustered at first, but quickly composed herself and introduced him to everyone. Mark watched the boyfriend's reaction. He became incredibly nervous. After the polite greetings, he backed away, but Mark caught him watching from a distance. Fury twisted Mark's gut, but he kept his cool. His plan was to see this guy squirm. He waited patiently for the right moment, when the most people were gathered. He wanted his revenge to really land. As the evening wore on and people relaxed, he quietly gathered a few of Sarah's colleagues and their partners for a toast to her. He started by thanking her for her support over the last 8 years. Just as she looked surprised by his heartfelt words, he dropped the bomb about the affair. He couldn't remember his exact words. His nerves were shot. He just said he had a present for Sarah, for being such an amazing wife. He pulled out the divorce papers. As she unwrapped them, he raised his glass. To the happy couple, he said, "My beloved wife and this unfortunate son of a bitch." Sarah froze, her eyes glued to the headline. She tried to interrupt, but Mark shouted joyfully, "Happy anniversary, my love. A lovely surprise for me on our special day. I got you one earlier." Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the boyfriend trying to sneak away. Mark lunged, grabbing him by the collar. Mark was 6 feet 5 inches. The guy was barely 5 feet 8 inches. Mark almost lifted him off his feet, demanding to know how long he'd been with his wife. Security rushed in, pulling him away, but in that brief moment, Mark felt a surge of satisfaction. Needless to say, he was escorted out. He didn't look back at Sarah or her boyfriend. He just got in his car and drove home. He waited for her to come back, but she didn't for 2 days. An oppressive silence hung in the air until he finally got a call from her lawyer. She wanted him to send her things, claiming the house and demanding alimony. He wanted to tell them to get lost, that if they even looked at his house, he'd unleash hell. But he agreed to a meeting, bringing his own lawyer. She confessed her love for the boyfriend, her resentment towards Mark for putting work first, for years of not being intimate. She and her boyfriend were already planning their wedding, eager for the divorce to be final. Her lawyer proposed a settlement, half his assets, the house, and it had to be quick. Mark stood his ground about the house. His lawyer said they'd fight it. Mark didn't want to give up his assets without a fight. They reached a compromise. He'd send her belongings, and they'd hold off on selling the house until the divorce was final. The next day, she showed up with her lawyer and took all her things. That evening, Mark went to the boyfriend's place. She'd already moved in. The boyfriend looked terrified when he saw Mark. Sarah came out of the bedroom, trying to shield him. Mark gently took her aside and firmly said he needed space. He told the boyfriend he wasn't there to cause trouble, just wanted to talk honestly. Softly, he asked, "You love this woman, right?" She told him she felt neglected for 8 years. That's how she ended up with him, right? Did he know she was still sharing Mark's bed while saying she loved him? The boyfriend stared at her, disbelief on his face. He almost lost it, demanding to know why she'd lied about their intimacy, repeating, "What made you say you hadn't slept with your husband for years? You lied to me." Sarah tried to deflect, promising to explain later. Her main concern was getting Mark out before he did more damage. She told him to leave, threatened to call the police if he didn't. Mark said he'd leave, but not before revealing the truth. He turned to the boyfriend. "She's been denying any intimacy with me, right? Want to hear her moans?" He played the audio. Sarah lunged for his phone, but he passed a USB drive to the boyfriend, telling him he could hear the whole thing there. Sarah reached for it, but the boyfriend held onto it tight. The tension between them was thick. Mark smiled broadly as he left. Revenge, he thought, was best served cold. The divorce was final, but that wasn't the end of it. Mark had completely destroyed them. After his little show at the party, Sarah and her boyfriend were immediately suspended from work, told not to come back until further notice. HR launched an investigation. Their company had strict rules about workplace romances. The following week, both Sarah and her boyfriend were fired. When she got home, she tried to play the victim, telling everyone Mark was jealous and insecure when she started her career, accusing him of being controlling and unfaithful. She claimed he'd ignored her for years. That's why she wanted a divorce. She painted him as the villain who ruined her career with a dramatic scene at her office party. The funny thing was, she'd moved in with her boyfriend after leaving Mark's house, falsely claiming Mark had kicked her out. So, the boyfriend felt sorry for her and took her in. It was then she realized she loved him, seeing how much he cared for her. even after losing his job because of Mark's jealousy. She twisted the whole story, but Mark had all the evidence. The world might believe her lies, but the court dealt in facts. Her dream of getting half his assets was crushed. His lawyer fought hard to protect his home. He did have to pay alimony because she was unemployed, but it was only for 6 months. He didn't regret a single penny. The rewards were worth it. He couldn't imagine what would have happened if he hadn't acted. She planned to leave him penniless and start a new life with her boyfriend. Unfortunately for them, the alimony barely covered her expenses, let alone theirs, as the boyfriend continued to leech off her. The guy thought he could charm a rich woman and live the easy life on her divorce settlement. Poor fool. He was jobless, his career in ruins, and stuck with a gold digger. Sarah had always hated working. She'd enjoyed a life of comfort. She only took the job because of the affair and to get back at Mark. Now, the poor girl had to work hard just to survive. And just when she thought things couldn't get worse, they did. Stripped of everything after the divorce, she was dumped by the very man who'd promised her happiness. The cracks started to show the moment Mark sent him the audio. It was hard to believe the guy trusted a married woman who was still living with her husband. Maybe he was just using her, hoping for a payout. In the end, when she couldn't deliver, he tossed her aside during the divorce proceedings. Mark learned some of this from his lawyer. Sarah had even tried to lie about their finances to get more alimony. She really thought he still cared about her miserable existence. He was grateful to the universe for its perfect timing, protecting his interests. Joy filled his heart like never before. After a year and a half of self-doubt, he was finally living again, taking care of himself. He was stronger than he ever thought possible. Thank goodness she didn't get away with it. Little old Sarah thought she had it all planned out, but now she was alone, unemployed, abandoned, facing the consequences of her own choices. The idea that she thought she could use the alimony to build a future with her boyfriend was just the cherry on top of her delusional dreams. May her future be a lonely one. Cheers to you, Opie. What do you think of all this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more updates. Until next time.